Please welcome House Minority Leader James Beverly of District 143 and Senator and Chair of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, Tanya Anderson of District 43. These leaders are hosted by Chris Clark, President and CEO, Georgia Chamber.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for staying with us for our first bonus session of the Georgia Chamber's annual Eggs and Issues event. I'm excited today to be joined by two of my friends, Georgia State Senator Tanya Anderson, who is the new Madam Chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, the largest black caucus in the United States of America, and my good friend, Representative Doc James Beverly from Macon, Georgia, who was just elected chair of the Democratic Caucus in the House. So guys, thank you guys for being with us this morning and being part of this first bonus session of Eggs and Issues. I want to jump right into it. I want to ask you a couple of personal questions first if we can, and then we'll jump into the policy stuff. But I'm always curious about people that run for elected office. What is the thing that happened in your past, or what's the one thing that inspired you to decide that you wanted to be part of this crazy world that we're living in right now and run for elected office? What inspired your public service? And Senator, I'll start with you.
Well, I love helping people. I like to see people's lives impacted, positively, and to change their trajectory from, nothing to something.
Right.
And so I started out as a city councilwoman, and then mayor, then state rep, now state senator, and I never thought I would be at this place. I only wanted to do one term as city council, and I was done because I felt like it was a crazy world.
Right.
But it takes the right people to make a difference in the lives of everyday people, and I won't stop. I'll keep doing it.
Well, we're glad that you kept doing it. We're appreciative of that. Doc, what about you? What inspired you?
When I was in high school, I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. And the very first black mayor happened when I was in high school. And it's a strange story because I played football in high school. Matter of fact, my junior year, nobody scored on us. We were good. Like, nobody scored on us. We weren't playing with little small people. We were it was regular folk. And that mayor became, Kurt Schmoke. He became the first black mayor. And he was at a rival high school. And so he went to city. I went to a place called Poly, and this guy becomes the mayor. He's like, 7, 8 years older than me. I was like, man, city, they ain't nothing. If he could do it, I could run for office and win. But that was just large to me as a kid. And then as I got older, obviously I went to school, became a doctor, and so forth. And I started realizing that how do you deal with the suffering within the human condition? And you can't amass enough wealth to do it. You have to figure out, how do I bring stakeholders to the game to figure out what is the work that we need to do to make sure that we leave this place a little bit better than when we got here. And it made sense. And once that kind of got large, I was like, okay, I got a true north in this moment. Was
the State House the first race you ever ran?
Yep, first and only.
We just keep running for that.
Let's just keep running, man.
So, and how long have you been in the House now?
This is gonna be 10 years this year.
So 10 years, and you just ran and you just became
the minority leader. Yeah.
Minority leader.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Tanya, you just became leader, chair of your caucus. Those internal leadership races are always fascinating to me, right? Because even within your own party, you're having to figure out how to build a coalition. And then within a subset of your party, you're figuring out how to build coalitions, how to get people to coordinate, think together, work together, move forward. So I'm curious, now that you're both in this role just not long at all, what excites you about this opportunity to lead? And Doc, I'll start with you and then come back to the senator.
There was a Jewish philosopher back in the 1800s, his name was Moltmann, and he said that love is the voluntary openness to the possibility of being affected by someone else. And there's a place where you have to be almost so authentically vulnerable and open to the possibility of being affected by someone else that it brings something out of you to make you focus on the work. And so for me to have different factions, we call the Republicans like a marching band. We call Democrats a jazz band. People riffing, they're doing whatever they want to do.
That's fair.
But it's still good music, right?
Right.
But you got to give people a chance to riff and do what they got to do. And in that moment, if you're vulnerable enough, something important happens. And so holding that environment so that people can riff and do what they do and come up with the music that make sense for our time. And so that's what's exciting about me, is understanding the factions that I have, trying to have them focus in on the work, and then allow that work to make us who we are.
And you've got the biggest Democratic caucus that you've had in, what, 15 years now?
Easily, yeah. 77
years?
members, and I'm telling you, each one of them a different man.
They're all different, right.
And it just switches, you know. So.
Yeah.
No, but it's exciting. It's exciting to be around really smart folk. I got seasoned folk. I got some people, you know, double degrees from Cornell. I mean, like, we got some smart folk.
Right.
And then taking the older seasoned members with the new ones, and just the possibility of making that admixture work for Georgians is very exciting.
Well, my assumption is that Calvin is going to be everybody's mentor,
Yeah,
right?
Calvin.
Does he have enough time to mentor everybody?
Yeah, pretty much. Calvin's been in his capital for like 675 years. I mean, I don't know, man, but yeah, I can't wait. He's like, Beverly, stop saying that.
Yeah,
right?
right.
No, he's gonna be good.
Senator, what about you? What excites you about leading the largest legislative black caucus in the country?
Well, it excites me because we have some very smart and strong leaders, and it takes passion. It takes, you know, the heart to serve. But I think that what we have now and where we are in Georgia, in America, Georgia has something to say.
Yeah.
We have the largest black caucus, and that means we represent a large number of the black community in the state of Georgia. And those things that concern us, we have the right people at the table. And I appreciate that my colleagues trusted me enough to lead us into that place of, you know, equity and the ability to partner, as well as the ability to move and to shift some things in the state of Georgia.
So how long have you been a state senator now?
I have been a state senator for 4 years.
4 years.
I was in the House, so I came to the House in 2013.
Okay, so but 7 years then to be in your leadership,
Yes.
it speaks volumes about your leadership and your service. So let's talk about this session and what your caucuses are going to be focused on. And Senator, we'll talk with you. What are those main 3 or 4 priorities for your caucus? And then Doc, we'll ask you that for the House, assuming that there's a difference there maybe.
So the priorities for our caucus, I will say, one is criminal justice, criminal justice reform. And I just authored and championed a bill that was favorable in the corporate arena for a lot of the members of the chamber and Fortune 500 companies. Another is, of course, healthcare. And then we want to focus on positioning Georgia for those things that I guess you would say have been those people who feel like they have been lost or left out, to position them for small business ownership and bringing them to the table for that kind of conversation. So we are definitely ready to do the work and move in that direction. Well,
and we want to work with you on that too. I mean, you know, Georgia's unique in that we have the highest minority business startup rate in the country, but we also have the highest failure rate from minority businesses. And we've been spending a lot of time, and you've heard us talk about it, of focusing on, you know, that access to capital, that access to human capital, that access to societal capital, and we want to be a partner with you on that. And then the other thing that's been remarkable from our research has been the licensure reform that needs to happen, because really Georgia has more licensing professions than any other state, and we know that that's a barrier to entry for a lot of people in the minority community. So we look forward to working with you on those issues.
And additionally, you know, we have that barrier for government contracts, you know, and so this is a conversation that we need to have, and we've been chomping away at the bit, but we are ready for that conversation to move forward.
Excellent. And we want to be part of that conversation.
And thank you so much.
Absolutely. Doc, what about your caucus?
First and foremost is going to be dealing with this pandemic, right? We're in the midst of COVID, and we got a lot of stuff going on right now, but the one thing that we need to be really focused on is making sure that we get a vaccine out, that we're responsible about the messaging around the science and the math that puts us in this position right now. If we get that right, then we focus on, so obviously healthcare is going to be a part of that conversation. People who now have COVID may have gotten it through no fault of their own. They now have pre-existing conditions. And so when we start thinking about what does the healthcare look like for folk who have pre-existing conditions, we need to start thinking about, we need to expand Affordable Care Act for real. Let's not make this a political football, but let's get it done. Second thing we got to focus on is education. We just took $1 billion out of education. We need to replace that. We got to put that back. Too many kids right now are living in a gap year, right? The digital divide is real.
Yep.
You got kids in rural areas, the wind blows, internet goes out, they can't attend school. You got kids in urban environments where they're using their grandmother's cell phone or their mom's cell phone. They don't have a tablet. They have poor internet connection. We're better than that. And so as we start to pull that money back in, how do we actually move that money in the directed focus to close the digital divide? And then obviously small business and the economy. When you have a small business, which I own a couple, and they're struggling because of where we find ourselves, what are the resources that are available for us to inject capital into these places, and also the human resources that we need to keep them running? And so our caucus is going to focus on healthcare, education, small business, but it's all within the backdrop of the COVID pandemic, and we have to use the right messaging so that people are not afraid to take it, so we can get to true herd immunity, not because everyone got sick, but because people took the necessary steps to make sure that we all were safe.
And then I also just assume that both your caucuses and the Senate Democratic caucus are going to be very engaged in any discussions on voter reform this year as well, right?
Absolutely.
That might not have been a priority when you met back in October and November, but obviously today it has become that. And trying to make sure that people believe in the integrity of the voting system, but make sure that we don't restrict that. Any comments?
My immediate comment is, and the reason I didn't focus on that because we just saw what we just went through a week ago.
Right.
Where people storming the Capitol because people who were sycophants to the president decided to put out something that says, hey, this is a fraudulent system that we find ourselves in. And it wasn't. It's the dog's tail wagging the dog. And as we keep putting energy into that, Georgia had the most amazing turnouts, right, in the history of Georgia, with very little rules changes that probably need to happen. But it's not this big thing that we need to do that would have this chilling effect on voters as we move forward. And so, yes, that's their priority, but would caution them, seriously, let's step back for a second. Right. Let's deal with the facts, not the fraud issue, but the facts. Let's change, maybe tweak a couple rules, but we shouldn't be spending that much time on that issue when you got people who are really suffering right now, who've lost their jobs through no fault of their own, healthcare they may not have because a job went away, trying to start up a business now in the midst of this creative society because we're home for a year. We need to be talking about how to do that. And I think that the election, yes, they're going to bring it our way, and we will absolutely vigorously fight it, but it's not something that we should be talking about now because it's a small issue that they've made this enormous thing. And I think when the facts meet the reality and people see that, I think we got to figure that out. So hopefully we'll steer away from that. But again, I don't see any chance of that happening. So we're ready for the fight, but it's something we don't really necessarily need to spend that much time on, I suspect.
And I'm guessing, Senator, this will be an issue not just in Georgia. It'll be an issue that legislative black caucuses across the country are going to have to deal with, right?
Absolutely. And I think we should never make it harder for people to be able to vote. We should make it easier. So the fact that people are able to vote by mail and had to happen because of the pandemic, I don't think that people ever would have used that as an option, for voting. They haven't in the past.
Right.
But that is something that we cannot continue to cut back on. I mean, it went from 45 to 21, and it's been just one thing after the other to try to stop it. And that is definitely something that we will stand up and fight for because that is our democracy. That is our nation. It is where we are and where we have been, and where we will go is to expand it versus trying to diminish it. So I just think that will definitely be a priority and a fight with the Black Caucus, for sure.
So Doc, you referenced it. We're in a very different political environment based on what's happened over the last couple of months. One of the things that we hear consistently from the business community is that we're tired of the politics of destruction, the divisiveness, the tribalism that exists out there. And I've always been a little proud when I'm with my peers in other states that we have such a great history in Georgia of Democrats and Republicans working together when it comes to the big issues, right? When it comes to transportation or economic development, that we seem to put those issues aside, working on the budget and move forward. And so I'm curious if there are any bills or any issues that kind of come top of mind, which you believe as we sit here today on day 3, that there really are opportunities for bipartisanship to move the ball down the field. Senator, anything come to mind for you?
I can't think of anything right off, but as you said, we don't have an issue working together. We can put our parties aside to move the state of Georgia forward. But there are those days, when, the red and the blue somehow make stars and stripes. I don't know if it turns out white, but it is the red and the blue making stars and stripes. And we find a way to not take it personal.
Right.
And we still find a way to move forward with those issues that are very, very important. And I will say, because there was so much support within the business community on a lot of issues, I just believe that there are those bills that will come and we didn't have a lot of pre-filed bills in the Senate.
Hey, I was surprised about that this year.
Me too. Very, very surprised.
Okay.
But yeah, so I think that there will be some bills presented that we can find a way to work together on, as we always have.
Doc, what about in the House?
Yeah, I said it earlier, we have to focus on getting people this vaccine. And so I think that's a human issue. How do we beat this pandemic? How do we focus on that? Let's really use math and science to do that. And then from a vaccine standpoint, let's get people vaccinated. And we need to do that, and we should be responsible with how we roll that out. And I think that's just something that we can work on.
Yeah, well, and you guys have copies now of our Recovery and Resiliency Task Force recommendations. One of those is to move forward with freight and logistics in Georgia, which gets people back to work. It builds our roads, our bridges, all the things that we need to do. And that's been traditionally been a bipartisan issue, cybersecurity, rural prosperity. And so, we look forward to working with both of your caucuses on there. And I want to end with one last question. You're both new to your leadership role, right? So we've got, literally thousands of business leaders from every chamber, every organization of the state watching today. What message do you have to the business leaders of the state, and how would you recommend that they work with you and your caucuses in these new roles? And Doc, I'll let you go.
So to the business leaders in the community, thank y'all for getting this forum to talk, right? I think our caucus has grown over the years. I think I started with 62, it's now 77, and that was 10 years. Obviously, the state of Georgia is trending toward being blue with purple. But put us in on the front end of the conversations and don't come to the back. Use the wisdom of the fact that there are different places in Georgia that are changing. Don't come to us after the fact and say, oh, by the way. Because the by the way is now becoming somewhat offensive because we could add to the conversation. And we could actually extract real value. I mean, if the business community really came to us on the front end, we could produce real value that leads to real healing in our state. And so I said, put us in on the front end, not the back end, and I think we will have a tremendous relationship moving forward.
That's great. Senator?
So thank you again for having us. To the business community, I will say, I will echo the sentiments of my colleague in the House, but I will also say that there are resources, there are those things that we can help assist with, making businesses stronger. We don't always have the answers, but we can, as he said, add value to what you guys bring to the table. And so I am just excited about the partnership because of my experience. Having worked with you guys just this past session was an absolute phenomenal way to bring the business community together and to say that, you are partners. So we're here to add that value and to just see what we can do to continue to make Georgia the #1 state to do business, but to do small business as well, and to do minority business as well, and to do women businesses as well. So, and because I represent all of that,
that's right.
We can work together to make some of those things happen. So I'm so excited about this next session. I really am.
Well, we're excited to have both of you in your leadership roles. We congratulate you. We appreciate the partnership that we've had in the past. We've been working with the House Democratic Caucus for 10 years now. Yep. And we want to have that same relationship. And we've been working with the Black Caucus for, probably 6 or 7 years. Thank you for what you guys do. We appreciate you being with us today.